Today we're going to get to hear from the fabulous Nicki Green. She is at Eastview Christian Church in Bloomington and has been there for 18 years. Is that what you said, Nicki? Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And so we're going to get to hear what Nicki has to say today.
So thanks, Brandy.
You're welcome.
Well, good morning. So I was in the last session where they were giving instructions about what to do and where to go. And I thought, oh, well, they're all coming to a session they didn't really sign up for. So thanks for reading your name tag. And we call that being voluntold. So you've been voluntold that you care about this information. So regardless of what you think, I don't even know why I'm here. Thank you for being here. Thanks for coming. And I pray that you find something pertinent and beneficial to you. So as we get started, there are fill in the blanks, but don't worry about that yet. So just relax for now. But as we get started, I want to begin by acknowledging that the last 2 years have been especially difficult. I know, shocker. It's been especially hard, and there have been 4 realities that every church has experienced. One, we've lost families. Our churches have lost families. We've had families that have drifted away from our church families, either by their involvement or by their commitment levels. We've gained some new families, and we're also experiencing lower attendances than we ever had since before COVID. And so as we got started today, I wanted to acknowledge that it's been a really hard time in ministry. And I want to just acknowledge that for you and thank you for being in ministry, because people are quitting in record numbers, more than ever before. So I don't know how long you've been in your role or your position, but thank you for your sticking with it through really hard times. And so what I wanted to do is just ask you, where are you? If you could just stop and think about, where are you right now? There are 4 words. So I'm going to ask you to take out your phones. And this is my number. And I don't have your number. I don't have any of your numbers on my phone. So this is like an anonymous thing. But if you would get 309-846-4953, and you have 4 options, and all you have to do is text a word, okay? These are your options. I tried to put some language to it. It may be self-explanatory, but your choices are: do you feel tired, discouraged, hopeful, or joyful? So let me just tell you a little bit more kind of how I'm looking at that. If you feel tired, it's been a long season with very little break, and you're just really tired. Are you feeling discouraged? Have there been people, places, circumstances that have just really left you feeling discouraged, feeling defeated? Or do you find yourself feeling hopeful today? Even though this has been a hard season, you're like, okay, we've gotten through it. I'm feeling hopeful about the future and what's happening, and we're on to a new track. Or are you just like joyful, like, you know what, that, like the last 2 years just kind of seems like, whew, glad we're over that. So where are you today? And just text me one of those words. Right now, just text 309-846-4953, and you can text hopeful.
Can I text back in like 5 minutes?
To see if it changed?
Because I know it will change.
I would love that. That would be awesome. I mean, I would really, and so with that, really, I pray that if you're sitting here like, I don't care about moving guests into discipleship or assimilation, but if nothing else, that you feel more encouraged today after our time together, then that's why you had number 3 on your name tag. That I just want to encourage you in whatever ministry role that you find yourself in. So at Eastview, our senior pastor, Mike Baker, he gives us a visionary direction every year. And in 2021, that visionary direction was return and rebuild. And he used this passage in Ezra, and I'll read it in just a second, but if you're familiar with this, the Israelites, they had been, kicked out, they had been exiled, they had been living in Babylon, and then God used a secular king, Cyrus, to tell the Israelites, you can come home, you can come back to Jerusalem. And at the time, there were, when we find the Israelites at the end of the war, 1.3 million men were fighting. There were less than 40,000 people that chose to come back. I mean, they're like, hey, a secular kid, they're saying, hey, you can come home. So, I mean, not to correlate this too much with COVID, but it's like, no more masks. No more, come back. Like, we're open again. Like, where are my people? But, much like the Israelites, many people weren't really that excited to come back. And 1.6 million people were fighting to keep their land. And then less than 40,000 people 70 years later came back. And so I just want to read this, and it always gets me emotional thinking about it. But I know for me, this passage describes how I think about our churches right now. So they started coming back and rebuilding the temple. So this is Ezra 3. I'm going to start in verse 10. When the builders completed the foundation of the Lord's temple, the priests put on their robes and took their places to blow their trumpets. And the Levites, descendants of Asaph, crushed their cymbals to praise the Lord, just as King David had prescribed. With praise and thanks, they sang this song to the Lord. He is so good. His faithful love for Israel endures forever. Then all the people gave a great shout, praising the Lord, because the foundation of the Lord's temple had been laid. But this is the part I want to focus in on. Then it says, but many of the older priests, Levites, and other leaders who had seen the first temple wept aloud when they saw the new temple's foundation. The others, however, were shouting for joy. The joyful shouting and weeping mingled together in a loud noise that could be heard far in the distance. And I don't know about you, but that's where I feel like we've been. There has been great rejoicing and excitement that we're back and people are back. And we even have new people that have joined us along the way. But there's also just this weeping of it's not the same. And, Solomon's temple was splendid. There was nothing like it. And it's really easy to go back and be like, really? This is the foundation? This is the rubble that we're left with? And so what are we going to do with that? And so, again, my first thing is I just want to encourage you today that wherever you find yourself, you may be weeping that it's not the same, or you may be rejoicing in what God's doing and what He's brought you through and where you're headed. But no matter what, it takes being intentional. And so if you kind of think about this whole process as a reboot, I think we found ourselves that COVID didn't necessarily start new problems, but it accentuated problems that we already had in the church. It was like, oh, yeah, they really weren't that committed. Or, what really is going on? And so evaluate where you are. And one of the reasons why I had you text is because this is something that we started doing during COVID. When everything shut down, I was like, oh, whoever would have thought, no more church. How do you do church when you can't do church? That would never happen. I don't say never anymore. I'm like, I never thought those things would happen. But I'm like, okay, well, we always had an invitation to, we call it the family room, for people to come and introduce themselves to us, make themselves known. It's like, what do we do? How do we talk to people? How do we communicate? Where are they? Who's online? What in the world do we do? And so pretty quickly we shifted. And so during our online services, we said, would you just text us hello? If you have questions, if you need someone to pray with you, if you need someone to talk to, if you're visiting us for the first time, we would love to meet you. Would you text us hello? And so for our adult ministries team at Eastview, we have 4 core values. We want people to feel seen. We want them to feel safe. We want them to be shaped and sent. If you're looking on your sheet, it's this top left corner here. And so the part of that vision that I own is the part where people feel seen and safe. And one of those things that we found, I never would have thought, oh, text hello is like the thing to do. But it was one of those things that really quickly we had to pivot and use the same value of seeing people and pivot. And what we found when we came back to service, people were gathering again and we were still online, people were, text us hello. A brand new person was texting us hello from the worship center. And they're like, actually, can I talk to someone in the building? I'm in the building today. And I'm like, first of all, I'm like, we have new people here? I couldn't believe, I wasn't expecting it. It was amazing. But I realized this is a much easier step for someone just to raise their hand and anonymously say, hey, I'm here for a reason, and be able to start conversations with people. And so I hope that just for yourself, you can personally feel seen and safe today. That wherever you find yourself in the midst of the last 2 years, whether it's tired or discouraged or hopeful or joyful, that you matter and your story matters. And we always want to help you take that next step. And that's really what assimilation is all about. Taking people from wherever they are and take them one step closer to following Christ. And so that process, that what and the why, the process of moving guests to become active, engaged, multiplying members of the church, and assimilation leads to life transformation by giving people the means and opportunity to become maturing followers of Jesus. And we've had conversations about this, and we talk about an engagement pathway, an engagement funnel, and I'll show you that in a little bit, but it's really those steps you want everyone to walk through. And some people would say, well, that's not discipleship. Well, you know what? You can't do discipleship unless you know who they are in the first place. And so if you don't get this part right, you don't have anyone to further their walk with Christ. And so if we can help get people to identify themselves and introduce themselves, hear their story, and then walk with them, help them get in small groups, find the place that God has created them to serve the church and the kingdom, it will transform their life. And so oftentimes we had always thought that you take a first-time guest and then, they have a great experience, they have great kids programs and a great meaningful sermon and, they feel welcome. We always thought that that meant people would return. if we get that equation right. But studies show, and this is your first, that's your first blank. If you have a friendly church, great kids programs, a meaningful sermon, means people return. No. Less than 20% of the people that visit your church return. And the reason for that isn't because they didn't have a great experience or, they just, wasn't friendly or, that preacher, he's not really that great or, those weren't the reasons people cited. The reason why people didn't come back to church is because they have a lifelong pattern of not coming to church. And now, especially during COVID, we have lifelong patterns. We have 2-year patterns of, I really like sitting in my jammies and watching church when I want to, or online, and isolating. And so it's helping people change those patterns. And so there are 4 reasons, this 4D theory of why people come to your church in the first place. First one is death. There's been a death in their family. It could even mean there's all kinds of deaths. Divorce, displacement, or a disaster. And you think about the last 2 years and you can check off the box for all of those. We've all had that, even metaphorically, in our lives. And so I don't know about you, but I can't imagine, I cannot believe the number of new people that have come to our church over the last 2 years. It's like it's been, everybody's in the pot and it's like shaken up the globe, and then everyone's just kind of landed different places. And I mean, we've had people, I was just sharing that one of my dearest friends moved to Florida over COVID. We had staff leave our church. We had, core families leave. We had about 100 core families leave and start a new church. And, there's been a lot of losses, but there's also been a lot of new people coming in. And so people aren't looking just for a friendly church. That's your next blank. They're looking for a friend. And so, if you just kind of think about, it's my job to help people find a friend. Just even find one other person that they can come into the church with and sit together. And that's been just one little thing I've tried doing every time I meet someone new, then to introduce them and say, Stephen, have you met Tom? Tom, Stephen, I want you guys to know each other because it's just going to help. Now, you don't just know me, but now you know Tom. And it's just going to help continue to grow. And hopefully Tom knows more people that he can introduce you to. And help people find their friends. And so I've actually changed our entire engagement pathway at Eastview because it's all about helping people find their people and their places within our church. And that is the key component of getting people connected. And so one thing I want to talk about, collecting information is really important.
And really hard.
Well, I would say it's there are people that can do it, but unless I always say I'm like a salesperson for Jesus. And there are lots of people that they're not comfortable. And I talk to my volunteer teams about this. I'm like, listen, I know you feel like a wackadoo when you're asking someone to fill out a card. But listen, they're coming to you. They're said, hey, I'm new. They expect something out of that. And so for years, I didn't believe in doing gifts. I'm like, no, we don't, that doesn't matter. But now, we have a gift. And so, hey, if you're new today, we would love to meet you. It would be our honor if you would introduce yourself to us. Would you go to one of the info centers or stop by the family room before you leave today? We can give you a gift and help you take your next steps at Eastview. It would just be our honor. So, you know, they come to us, we know them, hey, do you mind filling this card out? We'd love to connect with you and help you next steps that you can take at our church. Next time we do Starting Point, we'll send you an invitation of when that's going on. So the other thing that I've started doing is, more than ever, personal attention is so important. Because of our isolation and, you know, just being to ourselves, anything I can do to make it personal, we're trying to do that. And so going back to this idea that people, they do like your church. If I say, oh, you know, you went to Eastview last Sunday, did you have a good experience? Oh yeah, it was great. My kids loved it. They can't wait to go back. I'm like, oh, are you going this Sunday? Oh, I don't know. I'll have to check my schedule. You know, it's like, and so it's our job to remind people they want to come back to church. And so I've created a 30-day follow-up for every new person, every time we get their information. And so I have a team of volunteers, and they just follow up. And it is a multitude of forms of communication, from a phone call. I know, it's old school, but listen, people love it. I think we've thought like, oh, I don't answer a call, I don't know. They're doing it. And I think we've had it in our mind that people don't like it. But again, there's a reason people are coming to church. They need something. They want something. They're coming to us. So what are you going to, this is like a golden ticket. What are you doing with this person that God loves to help them take their next steps? And so over that 30 days, it's phone calls, email, text message, snail mail, postcard, and one day it's just, hey, Ellen, how can I pray for, is it Ellen? Eileen, yes, sorry. Ellen, how can I pray for you today? And you would not believe the kinds of responses that we're getting from that, because people are feeling seen and they feel safe to share. And it is so important. We're doing the same thing. Anytime someone is baptized, we do a follow-up with that and just make sure, hey, you know, we're so excited about your baptism. We want to make sure, how long have you been here? How are you connected in a small group? What other people do you have in your life that are encouraging you in your Christ-following journey? You know, it's a personal connection. And I just think several years ago, I went to a workshop and it was called How the Church Needs to Be More Like Netflix. And you know, you turn on Netflix and they're like, hey, these are shows that we think you might enjoy. And I was like, oh, I would enjoy that. That's fun. And you know, we have, over and over again, God calls us sheep. We're stupid. We don't know what to do. We don't know where to go. We're going to go the wrong way. And so people are relying on us. Even though, I mean, really the word for shepherd in scripture is elder. I'm not an elder, but I feel like I am the chief shepherd elder at our church, because people have to know where to go. What do you want them to do? They don't just automatically find community. They don't automatically like know where to serve. They don't automatically know how to walk with Jesus. So you've got to be very specific and help them know what to do. Be a good shepherd. And so what are those steps? So what can we do? That next page, number one, everyone has a role in assimilation. And I just, in fact, this last week, well, we've been in this strategic planning, so we write our plans. This is what I'm going to do this year. And in my strategic plan this year, I said I'm not starting anything new, but I am partnering with literally every department to help them see what their role is in assimilation. And so I just met with basically our CFO, head accounting guy, and I was like, hey, Mark, anytime we have someone new that's giving, I would really love it if one of the accountants would just call and say, hey, you know, thank you for giving. We want to help you take next steps at Eastview and help you find your people and places. We have this event coming up Sunday called Starting Point. And he's like, he's an accountant. He's like, I don't know about doing that. I'm like, Mark, it's your job. Like, we all need to do this. It's everyone's job to help people take their next step of faith. So, by the way, he did end up agreeing with me, and he's like, okay, send me the script. What do you want him to say? So, there's some people that just really like to be behind the scenes and like, well, you're making me talk to people. Yeah, it'll be great. So, it's everyone's role. Number 2, be proactive. And, you can look for people. And if you just look around, I don't know, sometimes the sizes of your church really helps with that. My husband and I, we were both preachers' kids. So, growing up, we always knew every single person in the church. And, when we first got married, we attended his dad's church in Springfield. I'm like, all right, they're new. I'm like, Greg, you go over there. I'm going to go over here, meet them. And, we just would start inviting people to our house and, have dinner together with all the new people. And I mean, way before this was even like a role in churches, we just did that. But then we went to Eastview. My husband's job moved 20 years ago, and I started looking around. And at that time, there were like 2,300 people that attended Eastview. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, who's new? How do we know people? How do we know if you're new? What do we do with you? And I'm just visiting. I'm freaking out about how to help people take their next step of faith. And so I'm like, hey, we need to provide a way. I go to our senior pastor, Gary York. Maybe many of you know Gary. I went to Gary, and I was like, Gary, we need a way for people to make themselves known at Eastview. And he's like, Nicki, no, I get this all the time. No, Nicki, people come to a big church because they want to be anonymous. I'm like, well, maybe, but maybe not. And so, like 98% of my job is convincing people we need to do something, I feel like. So I'm like, Gary, no, we can do it. We didn't have a beautiful room. We didn't have a great space. We had a cross over by the side of our sanctuary. And so we started saying at the end of the service from stage, hey, if you're new, if you have questions, if something in the service was touched you and you want to talk to someone, or you want someone to pray with you, we have a place. Just meet us over at the cross right after the service today. Can't wait to talk. Guess what? It worked. People wanted it. They self-identified and started coming to the cross. Now, through the years, we've developed beautiful spaces and places for people to go after the service, to have those conversations, but being proactive. So number 3, ask great questions. So when someone comes to meet and they're identifying themselves, really, like, what has brought them? Something has happened in their life to bring them to your church. Very rarely do I find someone that they're like, oh, everything in my life is perfect and rainbows and butterflies and, I just thought I would make a big life change and start coming to church and all my joy. There's a reason. And so I just feel like it's our role as a good shepherd to help discover what that is, what has brought them there. And again, it goes back to making people feel seen and safe, that you can share. I want you to know, we're here to love you, we're not perfect, and we want to help you take next steps to in your walk with Christ. So asking great questions can really help. And so a lot of my volunteer trainings revolve around helping people feel comfortable asking someone to fill out a card or asking great questions that will help uncover what steps they need to take, what they need to do. So again, the art of asking. This is one of my pet peeves. When someone says, oh, is today your first Sunday? Why would that be a pet peeve of mine?
Because if they've been around for a month, you missed them.
Yes, or 20 years.
I always ask, how long have you been here?
Yes, or exactly. That's, you just filled the second blank. Thank you, Thomas. How long have you attended? And I love it. And they're like, actually, you baptized me last year. I'm like, oh. It is so good to see you again. Oh, dear. I wish that were a joke. I mean, you guys, who else has done that? And you introduce yourself to someone and they're like, oh, you baptized me. Hopefully it's not like last week. But, I mean, I will say they look different when they're wet. Now, I will say, sorry, I feel like I need to defend myself. We do baptism Sundays where people just come forward, you know, so those Sundays, it's kind of dark, you can't see them very well, and it's just a super quick thing. That's why we do follow up with people, though, because people are just making spontaneous decisions to follow Christ, and I just don't want to be so irresponsible to not help them then, you know, in those decisions they made. So, yeah, so the correct answer, is it Thomas? Yeah. These are really good. Thomas said, how long have you been attending? What brought you here?
It may depend on the size of your church.
Absolutely.
My church, I know.
Yes, absolutely. And honestly, so 3 years ago, Eastview opened up another campus, and like it's on like the bad side of town. It's an old, traditional, beautiful church with stained glass windows and pews, and you know, holds maybe 200 people. And I love it when I go there because I can't just look around. And I mean, if you can do that, then that's another strategy that you need to go really be proactive. And you have the benefit of being able to go to people and say, hey, I just want to introduce myself to you. I'm so glad you're here. I have a gift for you and want to help you get connected. So,
only one way out of my church, and I'm there.
Yes, I love it. You got to go through my door.
I look for the time when I have to ask, how long have you attended?
Yes, I love it. And then ask open-ended questions. What, how, what brought you here today? What kinds of programs are you interested in, or kind of assess what's going on. So do you have clear, easy steps for people to take? So I just want to encourage you to think about, you may even know what those steps are, but do other people in your church know? If they meet someone new, what are they saying? What do they need to do? Where do they need to go? So, so at Eastview, we have something called our engagement pathway, engagement funnel. And I do have some copies. I don't know if anybody wants this, but it just has more information, details about what we do. But if you think about that assimilation pathway or engagement funnel, these are all the different ways people are coming to your church. So maybe you do some kind of an outreach. We just had an Easter egg hunt. And so, some people found us through that, an invitation. So all of those different outreaches, we're trying to get them their next step to come to a service. And, but actually I will say, one of the things in my strategic plan, I think for some people just coming to a service is a big step for them to take. And so we're trying to be really creative to think, man, what else can we do besides your next step being a Sunday service to be a dinner or a lunch or a group with a sports league, a huddle. This whole thing is helping people take clear, easy, small steps. So again, like to come to the family room is a much bigger step than someone sitting and texting me hello. And so kind of think about it in that. What are easier steps for people to take to move along? So the first thing, you have to know, have people make themselves known to us. So like in our engagement funnel, there are lots of different ways that we can gather information from people. So whether you give for the first time, if you check your kids in for the first time, if you, what other thing? You come to the family room, you text us low, all of those. So there's lots of different ways, lots of doorways. Not everyone's going to go through the same doorway either. I had a big aha. We have 3 kids, 18, 20, and 22. And our daughter is an introvert, like an introvert. And if you haven't noticed, I am not. And so my whole life with her, I'm like, oh my gosh, like how do I assimilate my daughter in church? And so, and Eastview, like each of our kids ministries almost is a church within itself. So like our junior high, they have their own service, and you know, every high school does. And so when she entered junior high, she's 20 now, so this has been a while, but when she entered junior high, I'm like, oh man, how do I help Gabby assimilate herself into junior high? Because like things that I would do, and they're like, hey, we're having a mixer and get to know people. I'd be like, yes. Gabby would be like, no, I'm not doing that in a million years. And you couldn't do anything to get me there. Well, you know what? She's not the only introvert in our church. And so it really helped me start looking at what assimilation looked like for our whole church, in just looking at her pathway of what are the things that are going to be helpful for her. And so not everyone's the same. And so every single person in our church has a different personality, they have a different experience, they have a different place in where they are spiritually and their willingness to want to share. And so think about, like, you have the same values, but maybe you need different vehicles to get them to the same thing. And think about it even through the lens of different personality types. Like an extrovert, they'll do anything you want them to do. But an introvert, no, what are we going to do that's going to make them feel seen and safe and comfortable to make themselves known to us? So the other thing about this is it's not a linear process. I would love it if someone, their very first Sunday, they come and say, I want to introduce myself to you. I'm like, great. Next Sunday is an event called Starting Point. It's to help you find your people and places. Next Sunday, they come to Starting Point. They find a small group, they connect in a group. From there, they do our online membership classes. They're baptized, they start serving, you know, boom, 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 boom. I would love that. But that's just not everyone's path. Some people do that, we have that, and it's available. We have the systems and processes for that, but also acknowledge that everyone's on a different path, and it's a process, and it's not linear. Sometimes people, they won't come to Starting Point until they've been at Eastview for 5 years. That's why we took membership out of that language at all, because if you want to be a member somewhere, well, I want to know what they're about. I'm going to want to hang out with them a little while before I decide that's what I want to do. So I just want to encourage you to think about, what is your engagement pathway? Where do you want people to go? If you meet someone new, do you have a next step for them? Are you sharing a compelling vision of even what that looks like? So if you come to our church, this is what the expectations are. This is what we're all about. So now what? Where do you want them to go? And then you're trying to get them down to this core. And for us, we want people to gather, grow, give, and go. We want you to attend church in large community. We want you to be in small group community. We want you to grow spiritually, understanding holy habits, growing in your faith. We want you to give financially and by serving your gifts, to volunteer. And we want you to go. We want you to share your faith locally and globally. So those are the expectations. That's what it looks like. If you come to Eastview, that's what we want you to move towards in all those ways. So being able to define that, understand it, and make it clear and compelling to help people take those next steps of faith. All right. I wanted to leave time for questions. I I've been doing this for a long time. I could talk about this, and I will talk about it till Jesus returns. So.
I have one question.
Yes.
I missed the answers to 4. I don't know if I was listening, talking, or both.
To the 4 Ds.
No, we didn't get the don't.
Right up here where it says don't.
Don't.
Number 4 there.
Oh, don't wait. Think easy next steps. Thank you. Yeah, that
Thanks
drives
for
me
asking.
crazy to not have all the blanks filled in. Wouldn't be.
I kept trying to.
Try to copy off of me?
Yeah.
What are the 4 Ds?
The 4 Ds are death, divorce, displacement, and disaster. And the idea behind that is those are reasons, often reasons why people come to church for the first time. You're welcome.
It's another D, driving past the church lots and lots of times.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and we always say, you didn't really want to come today, but the crowd, you didn't have another way. They just said, you gotta, traffic forced you.
Do you do visitations in the home? Do you go to people's homes?
We do not. Not guests right now. We have through the years, but we have not gone to new guest homes. I love that idea. Do you?
It's old school, but
It is old. I'm an old school girl.
Yeah, I find that less and less people are comfortable with that.
Yeah.
It's more of an invasion than a visit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, certainly all of this is, these are principles. And I know you might think, well, my church isn't the size of Eastview, but it doesn't matter the size. The principles are still the same. And I have found that just even in my own experience of going to different churches, that smaller churches have a more difficult time doing this. I have a harder time, I'd been at Eastview for a long time before we opened a small church. So we went from having a mega church to now, how do we do this in a church of 200 people? And so, the same processes, but we had to, a critical mass is really an important part. So, if you're going to have an event or something for new people, so like when we started doing Starting Point at our new smaller location, there were 4 people that came. And I was like, you know what? It's after church. I said, how about we're going to go to Monocle's. So, do I normally take the group of Starting Point out to lunch? We feed them typically, but you learn to change things. And it was great. We sat around a table at lunch and got to know each other, and we take everyone's picture. So, I'm like, hey, I know this might be weird, we're at Monocle's, but I'm gonna take your picture. So we put it in our database because we wanna know you. And so it looked different. Again, it goes back, it's the same value, but it's a different vehicle. And when we started doing this, even years before I was ever on staff, and Gary York was the senior minister, he just had dessert at Gary's house. He would invite, new people every 6 months. You take that, and so just determine at the beginning of the year, hey, when are we going to do pizza with the pastor, or dessert at the pastor's house? And then if you meet someone new, say, hey, next month, we're going to have a gathering at my house. I'd really love for you to come and be there and get to know each other better. So it's the same thing. The same principle, but it just looks different. And so at a big church, we have to be a lot more well, I wouldn't say have to be more, but everyone has to know about it and be on the same page. And because the volume, we get a lot of practice doing that. And so sometimes I think in a smaller church, you get smaller pockets of people feeling comfortable not welcoming new people.
In a small church, we would go to the hospital. We knew everybody who was from our town that was in the hospital, so we were visiting all
Everyone.
the churches. Then you went in one day and they said, "Oh no, HIPAA law. You cannot even know who's here." I said, "I already know who's here. I'm gonna go visit them." "Well, you just can't go visit anybody you want." And then there it was. Now you can't have but one person, if you get to have one person in the hospital with you. So the paradigm has been such a terrific shift. It's just crazy massive.
Yeah.
So I think that COVID, while it exposed some things in the churches, I think it also provides a great opportunity for us to do this very thing. To say, it's a new day, it's a new way, and here we go.
Adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, you talk, I serve a small church. And so, interestingly enough, we have a lot of young families and young adults, and I'm having very few older adults. And they don't really want me calling in their home.
Yeah, they're afraid.
But by golly, show up at the T-ball field and say, "Hey, just wanted to come say hello. Wanted to watch your little one do somersaults in the outfield." And,
Chase butterflies.
you know, I make sure that the kids see me, because the kids say to their friends, "Hey, the pastor of my church," now they've only been one time, but the pastor of my church came and watched me play T-ball.
Yes.
Well, no, I watched you run around, but it's okay. You know, but that's a way to make a connection. But I think COVID has just opened up, really, our church learned that we didn't have to have meetings just to be having meetings. And we have done away with all that meeting stuff. If we can't do it by an email, a text, a phone call, or on Sunday morning between Sunday school and worship, we probably don't need to be doing it. But it just offers great opportunities for us to say, how are we welcoming these new people? Because I'm looking around at my small town, small church, and I'm going, where are these people coming from who are walking in our doors? And the ones who are here want to stay at home and have pancakes with their kids on Sunday morning. So it's kind of like a new church.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It is exciting.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's a great example of what you're doing. It's the same value, making people feel seen and safe. It may look different. You're not inviting them to something even, but you know, going to them.
That's right.
And our youth staff, that was part of their strategic plan this year, that they said, you know, we've got to get outside of this building, and we've got to see our kids in their, you know, band concerts and their theater productions and their games.
Basketball, yeah.
They've got to do that, because again, we're just in a place, we have to do a better job making people feel seen and safe, and that we care about you, because people are so desperate for that. And if there are lots of other places or organizations that can make people feel like that, the church should be the best at doing it.
Real life situation. I'm an extreme extrovert.
Extreme.
My wife is not, nor are either of our children. Our daughter.
You feel lonely.
No.
An extrovert is not gonna feel lonely.
Our daughter she's a clinical therapist, a PK, an introvert, in a position of having to find a new church. She intentionally comes into the service like a minute or so late, sits in the last row, and never looks at anybody when she talks to them, so she can get in and get out. I mean, she wants to find a place for her and her kids, but everything about her body language is "leave me the heaven alone." How do you adapt your vehicle to match the resistance? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, so.
Not that other people
Go over and give her a great big bear hug.
Oh dear, no. She would die. Well, I mean, I think it's important to observe people's body language, really. And so, you know, in training with people in the family room, understanding them, trying to mirror what they're saying to you. But like in that case, I love it when people have kids because they've got to tell us they're there.
They have to check the children.
So in that case, then all the new families, they come to me, and so then they're going to go into the 30-day process. So she's going to get a text message. She's going to be a part of that, and that's going to be hopefully easier for her to say, hey, you know, I'm Kathy. I serve on the involvement team at Eastview. Just want to help you take next steps at Eastview. We have this thing, want to help you get in community. So, you know, so there are some workarounds that we have to help with that, so people don't.
Need a big workaround.
Yeah.
We
So.
Send your extreme extrovert to go say hi to that person.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, there are two things. We're going to get them by if they have kids, but then also the text hello.
She has even kept her kids with her and not sent them to children's church, so she doesn't.
So she didn't have to do that. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Brandy's giving me a look. So we have about just a little bit longer. If any of you, there's more information on the back. I love to talk about this and do training and workshops. So, you know, if you want to have further conversations, or if I can help you implement some of this and encourage you in developing your engagement pathway at your church, whatever I can do to help, I'd love to do that. And you have my cell number and all my information.
Where is the church?
Eastview Christian Church. It is in Normal, Illinois, which is about 45 minutes from here.
There's a Normal place in Illinois.
There is Normal. Yes. Yes. So God bless each of you. Thank you so much.